The observation deck of the Galactic Council survey ship, Harmony's Edge, hummed with quiet efficiency as Ambassador Kel studied the blue-green world rotating slowly beneath them. His elongated fingers traced patterns across the holographic display, analyzing the electromagnetic signatures rising from the planet's surface. "Remarkable," he murmured to his aide, Nukes. "They've achieved nuclear fusion, quantum computing, even rudimentary faster-than-light communication." Knox's crystalline eyes flickered with interest. "Then why do our scans show such primitive weaponry?" The display zoomed in on a fortified installation somewhere in what the inhabitants called North America. Massive wooden and metal constructions dominated the defensive perimeter, structures that looked like they belonged in a museum of ancient warfare. "Catapults," Kel said, his voice tinged with bewilderment. "Trebuchets, ballistas. These humans have mastered stellar physics, yet they still fling rocks with mechanical leverage. Perhaps it's ceremonial?" Knox suggested. Kel shook his head. "Our intelligence indicates these weapons are fully operational and integrated into their military doctrine. Every major human settlement has them." The bridge fell silent as both aliens contemplated this paradox. In their travels across the galaxy, they'd encountered thousands of civilizations. The pattern was always the same: as species advanced technologically, they abandoned primitive weapons for energy-based systems, particle beams, and gravitic manipulators. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface." "Put it through," Kel commanded. The hologram flickered, then resolved into the image of a middle-aged human woman with graying hair and sharp eyes. She wore what appeared to be a military uniform, though it lacked the intimidating aesthetic most warrior species preferred. "Welcome to Earth," the human said calmly. "I'm General Brooks of the United Earth Defense Force. We've been expecting you." Kel straightened, his diplomatic protocols engaging automatically. "Greetings, General Brooks. I am Ambassador Kel of the Galactic Council. We come in peace, seeking to establish formal relations with your species." "We appreciate that," Brooks replied. "Though I should mention, we've been tracking your ship since you entered our solar system 3 days ago." Knox's eyes widened. Their stealth technology was supposed to be undetectable by species at this technological level. "Impressive," Kel acknowledged. "Your detection capabilities exceed our projections." Brooks smiled, and something in that expression made Kel slightly uncomfortable. "We're full of surprises, Ambassador. Would you care to visit the surface? I'd be happy to give you a tour of our facilities." "That would be most welcome," Kel replied. "We're particularly interested in understanding your unique approach to defensive systems." "Ah yes, our catapults," Brooks said, her smile growing wider. "I think you'll find them quite educational." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in thoughtful silence. "Something feels wrong about this," Knox whispered. Kel nodded slowly. "Indeed. A species capable of detecting cloaked vessels shouldn't still be using medieval siege engines. Unless ... Unless what, sir?" "Unless we're missing something fundamental about human nature. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Sci-fi stellar conflict is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you're hungry for HFY battles and tales of human valor against alien might, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring these front lines to you." The shuttle bay doors opened with a mechanical grinding that seemed almost primitive compared to the smooth operation of Galactic Council technology. As their small diplomatic craft descended through Earth's atmosphere, Kel found himself studying the defensive installations scattered across the continents below. From orbit, they had seemed quaint, even backward. Up close, they were massive, towering wooden and steel constructions that dwarfed the buildings around them. Each installation was precisely positioned for maximum coverage, their design clearly optimized for both range and accuracy. "Ambassador," the pilot called back, "General Brooks has cleared us to land at Site 7. It's their primary command facility." "Understood," Kel replied, though his attention remained fixed on the trebuchet dominating the landscape below. The machine stood nearly 50 meters tall, its counterweight alone larger than most STARFIG HTERS. As they touched down, Kel noticed human soldiers moving with quiet efficiency around the perimeter. Their equipment appeared to be a strange mixture of advanced and archaic energy rifles alongside crossbows, powered armor decorated with what looked like medieval heraldry. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador," General Brooks said as she approached their craft. Up close, she seemed even more composed than she had on the transmission. "I trust your journey was comfortable?" "Indeed it was," Cal replied, stepping onto human soil for the first time. "Your world is beautiful, General. And your defensive preparations are comprehensive." Brooks chuckled. "That's one word for it. Come, let me show you around. I think you'll find our approach rather unique." As they walked toward the massive trebuchet, Cal couldn't help but ask the question that had been bothering him since their arrival. "General, forgive my curiosity, but why do you still employ such ancient weapons? Your technology is clearly advanced enough for more sophisticated alternatives." Brooks paused beside the great machine, running her hand along its wooden frame with obvious affection. "Tell me, Ambassador, what do you see when you look at this?" "A siege engine from your planet's medieval period," Cal replied honestly. "Impressive craftsmanship, but ultimately primitive." "Exactly what we hoped you'd think," Brooks said quietly. Something in her tone made Cal's diplomatic instincts flare with warning. The Dominion warfleet materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system like a swarm of metallic locusts. Admiral Voss stood on the bridge of his flagship, Inevitable Victory, reviewing the intelligence reports his scouts had gathered during their reconnaissance mission. "Pathetic," he sneered, studying the holographic displays of Earth's defensive installations. "Look at these weapons, Captain Rex. Wooden siege engines. Stone throwers. These humans are barely past their Bronze Age." Captain Rex, a veteran of 17 successful conquests, nodded with practiced enthusiasm. "The Galactic Council's preliminary report confirmed as much, sir. Advanced in some areas, but militarily primitive. This should be our easiest campaign yet." The invasion fleet spread across space like an opening flower of destruction. 300 warships, each capable of glassing a planet's surface, moving toward this small blue world with casual confidence. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface." "Let's hear what these primitives have to say," Voss commanded. The hologram resolved into the same human woman who had met with Ambassador Cal weeks earlier. General Brooks appeared calm, almost serene, as she looked directly into the camera. "Dominion fleet," she said simply, "you are approaching sovereign human territory. Turn back now, and we'll consider this a navigation error." Laughter rippled across the bridge. Voss couldn't remember the last time a target species had attempted diplomacy from such an obviously weak position. "General Brooks, I presume?" Voss replied with mock courtesy. "I am Admiral Voss of the Dominion Third Fleet. Your planet has been selected for annexation. Surrender now, and your population will be relocated to suitable worlds. Resist, and we will be forced to use more direct methods." Brooks tilted her head slightly. "I see. And you've based this decision on your assessment of our defensive capabilities?" "Indeed," Voss said, unable to keep the condescension from his voice. "Very impressive catapults, General. I'm sure they were quite effective against your neighbors 1,000 years ago." "Interesting assumption," Brooks replied. "Would you like to test it?" The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Dominion bridge in amused silence. "Begin the assault," Voss ordered. "Standard pattern. Disable their communication networks first, then eliminate their defensive installations. Try to avoid excessive civilian casualties. We'll need workers for the mines." The first wave of attack craft swept toward Earth like a silver tide. As they approached the outer defensive perimeter, crews readied their weapons for what they expected would be a brief and decisive engagement. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, "the humans are activating their siege engines?" On the main display, massive trebuchets and catapults across Earth's surface began their firing sequences. Ancient counterweights dropped with mechanical precision, launching their payloads in high arcs toward the approaching Dominion forces. "They're throwing rocks at us," Captain Rex said in disbelief. "They're actually throwing rocks at spacecraft." "Let them waste their ammunition," Voss replied dismissively. "Continue the approach. Those projectiles can't possibly penetrate our shields." The first wave of human projectiles reached the Dominion attack craft with disappointing predictability. The primitive stone balls struck energy barriers and deflected harmlessly into space, exactly as expected. As anticipated, Voss noted, begin targeting their siege engines. Let's put an end to this display before the second volley launched. From Earth's surface looked identical to the first. Ancient machines hurled what appeared to be more stone projectiles in graceful parabolic arcs. The Dominion crews barely bothered to track them, which was their first mistake. The projectile that struck the destroyer, Swift Conquest, looked like a boulder right up until the moment of impact. The nuclear fireball that vaporized the ship's forward sections came as something of a surprise. What in the void was that? Voss demanded as alarms began wailing across his bridge. Sir, I'm reading massive energy releases from the human projectiles, the sensor officer reported, his voice climbing toward panic. They're not stones, sir. They're warheads. Nuclear warheads. Another trebuchet fired from the surface. This time, the crew of the targeted frigate had enough warning to raise emergency shields. It didn't help. The antimatter charge detonated against their barriers with the force of a small star going nova. The frigate simply ceased to exist, leaving only expanding clouds of superheated plasma. Impossible, Voss whispered. How are they fitting nuclear devices into those machines? The projectiles are too small, the delivery system too primitive. Sir, Captain Rex called out, his composure finally cracking. We're taking massive casualties. The entire first wave is gone. On the tactical display, red icons marked the positions where Dominion ships had simply vanished. Each impact had been preceded by what looked like primitive stone projectiles launched from obviously ancient siege engines. Pull back to safe distance, Voss ordered. And get me an explanation for how these barbarians are throwing nuclear weapons. With wooden catapults. As the remaining Dominion forces retreated beyond the range of Earth's seemingly primitive artillery, Admiral Voss stared at the planet that had just destroyed a quarter of his fleet with what appeared to be medieval technology. For the first time in his career, he wondered if he had seriously underestimated his enemy. Deep within the Earth Defense Command bunker, General Brooks watched the Dominion fleet regroup at a safer distance. The main tactical display showed red icons clustering beyond the range of the surface installations, their formation tight with newly learned caution. Phase 1 complete, reported Colonel Park, her tactical officer. Enemy casualties, 73 ships destroyed, minimal damage to our forces. Excellent, Brooks replied. How are they taking the revelation? About as well as expected, Park said with a slight smile. Long-range sensors show significant communication traffic between their ships. They're trying to understand what happened. Brooks nodded, then activated the communication array. Time to enlighten their visitors about the reality of human engineering. The bridge of inevitable victory. Admiral Voss was indeed struggling to comprehend the tactical situation. His finest analysts had been reviewing the attack footage for the past hour, and their conclusions made no sense. Sir, his chief engineer reported, the projectiles appear to be standard stone or metal construction right up until impact. Our sensors detect no energy signatures, no exotic materials, nothing that should be capable of nuclear-level destruction. Then explain how they vaporized my ships, Voss demanded. I cannot, sir. The communication system chimed with an incoming transmission from the planet below. General Brooks appeared on screen again, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood a man in a white laboratory coat, his expression eager and slightly manic. Admiral Voss, Brooks said pleasantly, allow me to introduce Dr. Webb, our chief weapons engineer. He's quite excited to explain what just happened. To your fleet. Dr. Webb stepped forward, practically bouncing with enthusiasm. Oh, this is wonderful. Finally someone to appreciate the elegance of our design. You see, Admiral, you made the classic mistake of assuming that primitive delivery systems meant primitive payloads. What are you talking about? Voss snarled. The catapults, Webb exclaimed. Beautiful in their simplicity. Ancient mechanical principles, completely predictable trajectories, and absolutely no energy signature to give away their true nature. Impossible, Voss insisted. Nuclear devices require sophisticated guidance systems, complex triggering mechanisms. You can't just throw them like rocks. Webb's grin widened. Why not? A nuclear device is just a very energetic rock when you think about it. The real challenge was fitting everything into projectiles that looked appropriately primitive to your sensors. General Brooks took over the explanation. Our trebuchets launch specially designed shells, Admiral. From the outside they appear to be solid stone or metal. Inside, however, they contain some of our most advanced technology. Miniaturized fusion warheads, antimatter charges, even a few experimental quantum disruptors. The beauty of it, Webb continued excitedly, is that your scanners can't penetrate the shells without giving away your surveillance. So you see exactly what we want you to see, primitive weapons throwing primitive ammunition. Admiral Voss felt a cold certainty settling in his stomach. You deliberately appeared primitive to lure us into range. Of course we did, Brooks replied matter-of-factly. Would you have brought your fleet within artillery range if you'd known we were launching nuclear weapons from our catapults? I rather doubt it. On the tactical display, more trebuchets across Earth's surface began their loading sequences. This time, however, Voss's enhanced scanners, now configured to penetrate the projectile casings, revealed the horrifying truth. Each stone contained enough destructive force to level a city. This is madness, Captain Rex whispered. Who thinks to put antimatter warheads in catapults? Humans, apparently, Brooks said, having overheard the comment. We've always been rather fond of unconventional solutions. Why build complex missile systems when a good trebuchet can throw a nuclear device just as effectively? But the range, Voss protested. Catapults are short-range weapons. Webb practically giggled. Oh, Admiral, these aren't your grandfather's catapults. Electromagnetic acceleration, gravitic assistance, trajectory computation systems that would make your missiles jealous. We just wrapped all that technology in wood and stone to make it look harmless. Plus, Brooks added, we've had centuries to perfect the art of making things appear simpler than they are. It's surprisingly effective against species who judge capability by appearance. The Dominion fleet's formation began to shift, ships moving to what they hoped was a safer distance. Their movement was tracked by hundreds of siege engines across Earth's surface, each one now revealed as a precision delivery system for weapons of mass destruction. Admiral, his tactical officer reported nervously, the humans are adjusting their aim to track our movement. Range appears to be significantly longer than anticipated. Voss stared at the tactical display, watching red targeting indicators follow his ships as they retreated. Each indicator represented a medieval siege engine that could apparently throw nuclear weapons with modern precision across distances that shouldn't be possible. General Brooks, he said carefully, what are your terms for our withdrawal? Brooks smiled, and this time there was nothing friendly about the expression. Oh, Admiral, I'm afraid it's too late for that. You came here to conquer Earth. Now you get to discover what that actually means. The trebuchets fired in perfect synchronization, launching a second wave of devastation toward the retreating Dominion fleet. The Dominion fleet scattered like startled fish as the second volley of human artillery reached their new positions. Admiral Voss watched in growing horror as his supposedly safe distance proved inadequate against weapons that shouldn't have been able to reach them. Impossible range, Captain Rex muttered, his composure finally breaking completely. Those projectiles just traveled over 15,000 kilometers. Catapults can't do that. They can when you add electromagnetic rail acceleration to the launch sequence. Dr. Webb's voice crackled over the communication channel, his enthusiasm undimmed by the destruction he was causing. We've been refining the technique for decades. Mechanical launch provides the initial velocity, then magnetic fields take over for the extended range portion. The frigate Domination simply vanished in a ball of plasma as another primitive projectile found its target. Its antimatter payload left nothing but glowing particles dispersed across several cubic kilometers of space. Admiral, the communications officer reported, we're receiving surrender offers from 6 more ships. They want to break off from the fleet. Denied, Voss snarled. We don't retreat from primitives throwing rocks. Sir, the tactical officer interrupted. With respect, those aren't rocks anymore. Latest analysis shows the projectiles contain technology we can't even identify. Some kind of quantum-level manipulation that shouldn't be possible with their apparent tech base. General Brooks appeared on screen again, her expression now coldly professional. "Admiral, you seem to be having difficulty accepting the situation. Perhaps another demonstration would help clarify matters." On the surface of Earth, a single massive trebuchet began its firing sequence. This machine dwarfed all the others, standing nearly 100 meters tall with counterweights that could be seen from orbit. "That's our special project," Dr. Webb said proudly. "We call it the World Breaker. Took us 5 years to build, but the results are spectacular." The great machine fired with mechanical precision, launching a projectile that looked no different from the others. Admiral Voss tracked its trajectory with growing unease as it arced toward his flagship. "Emergency evasive maneuvers," he commanded. "Inevitable." Victory began burning hard to port, its massive engines straining to move the dreadnought out of the projectile's path. The ancient human artillery round adjusted its course accordingly. "It's tracking us," Captain Rex said in disbelief. "The projectile is actively correcting its trajectory." "Guidance systems," Webb explained cheerfully. "Why shouldn't a catapult round be able to change course? We put AI guidance packages in all our special ammunition. This one's particularly sophisticated. It won't stop until it reaches its target." The projectile struck inevitable Victory's starboard hull with what seemed like minimal impact. For a moment, Voss dared to hope their shields had absorbed the blow. Then reality reasserted itself that the quantum disruptor warhead didn't explode in any conventional sense. Instead, it began systematically dismantling the molecular bonds holding the ship's hull together. Metal plates simply stopped being solid, their atomic structure reverting to component particles. Abandoned ship. Voss screamed as whole sections of his flagship began dissolving into cosmic dust. Emergency pods launched from the dying dreadnought as the quantum effect spread through its superstructure. Within minutes, the pride of the Dominion fleet had been reduced to expanding cloud of constituent atoms. From his escape pod, Admiral Voss watched the remainder of his invasion force break apart under continuous bombardment from Earth's surface. Each shot looked like something from humanity's medieval period right up until the moment of impact. "This is Fleet Admiral Voss to all remaining ships," he transmitted on the emergency frequency. "General retreat. Repeat, general retreat. Break off immediately and return to Dominion space." "Sir," came the reply from one of his surviving captains. "What do we tell High Command?" Voss stared at the blue-green world below, where hundreds of wooden siege engines continued their methodical destruction of his fleet. Each ancient machine represented a level of tactical deception he had never encountered in 17 campaigns. "Tell them," he said slowly, "that we attacked a planet defended by catapults that launch nuclear weapons. Tell them that primitive doesn't mean harmless. And tell them that humanity is not to be underestimated again." The surviving ships of the Dominion Third Fleet limped away from Earth, leaving behind the wreckage of their preconceptions along with their destroyed vessels. On the surface, General Brooks watched the enemy retreat with quiet satisfaction. "Stand down to alert status," she ordered. "But keep the catapults loaded. Something tells me word of this is going to spread." Dr. Webb was already sketching designs for their next generation of siege engines. "You know, General, I've been thinking, what if we mounted some of the trebuchets on starships? Imagine the tactical possibilities." Brooks smiled despite herself. "One revolution at a time, Doctor. One revolution at a time." In the depths of space, the scattered remnants of the Dominion fleet carried news of their defeat back to the heart of their empire. Behind them, Earth continued its slow rotation. Protected by wooden weapons that threw the fire of stars, the galaxy was about to learn a valuable lesson about judging species by their methods rather than their results. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The massive amphitheater buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from across the galaxy struggled to process reports that defied conventional military wisdom. Ambassador Kell stood at the central podium, his usually composed demeanor showing cracks of bewilderment. Behind him, holographic displays showed footage from the Dominion retreat, images of advanced warships being destroyed by what appeared to be medieval siege weapons. "Honored delegates," Kell began, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. We gather today to address what may be the most significant strategic miscalculation in galactic history. The species we dismissed as primitive has proven capable of military innovations that challenge our fundamental assumptions about technological development. The Dominion delegate, Admiral Voss himself, rose from his assigned seat. His uniform bore the scars of his escape from inevitable victory, and his expression carried the weight of unprecedented defeat. "The humans," Voss said simply, "do not think like other species. Where we see the evolution from primitive to advanced, they see opportunity for deception. They deliberately maintain the appearance of medieval warfare while incorporating technology we couldn't detect." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The concept was almost incomprehensible to civilizations that had spent millennia following predictable technological progressions. "But surely," interjected the Zephyrian representative, "there must be limits to this approach. Ancient weapon systems cannot match modern alternatives in all scenarios." The chamber's main display activated, showing a communication feed from Earth. General Brooks appeared, flanked by the now familiar figure of Dr. Webb, whose manic enthusiasm had only grown in the months following their victory. "Honored delegates," Brooks said with diplomatic courtesy, "we appreciate the opportunity to address this assembly. I understand there are questions about our military doctrine." "Indeed," Kell replied. "General Brooks, our analysis suggests that your approach, while effective, cannot be sustained across broader conflicts. Surely you recognize the limitations of primitive delivery systems?" Dr. Webb stepped forward, practically vibrating with excitement. "Oh, Ambassador, you're still thinking in terms of limitations rather than possibilities. May I show you our latest development?" The display switched to show a massive space construction facility orbiting Earth. At its center sat a siege engine of impossible proportions, a trebuchet designed for zero-gravity operation, its counterweight system replaced by controlled antimatter reactions. "We call it the Orbital Bombardment Platform," Webb explained gleefully. "Capable of throwing quantum singularities across interstellar distances. We've successfully tested it on an abandoned asteroid field. The results were quite spectacular." The assembly fell silent as the implications sank in. A weapon system that looked like an ancient catapult but could launch black holes between star systems represented a paradigm shift that no one had anticipated. "You see," Brooks continued, "we've learned that perception shapes reality in warfare. When enemies underestimate your capabilities, they make tactical errors. When they can't understand your technology, they can't effectively counter it." "But why maintain this deception?" asked the Centaurian delegate. "Why not simply reveal your true capabilities?" Brooks smiled, and for the first time, the expression looked genuinely warm rather than coldly professional. "Because it works, because it's uniquely human, and because there's something deeply satisfying about proving that innovation matters more than appearance." Ambassador Kell found himself reassessing every assumption he'd made about technological development. "General, are you saying that humanity deliberately chose to appear primitive as a strategic advantage?" "Not exactly," Brooks replied. "We genuinely love our catapults and trebuchets. They're elegant machines, reliable and effective. We just saw no reason why elegant couldn't also be devastating." Dr. Webb nodded enthusiastically. "Why abandon something that works just because it's old? Instead, we improved it. Magnetic acceleration, quantum targeting, exotic ammunition, all wrapped in familiar wooden and stone construction that no one suspects. The lesson here," Brooks continued, "is that progress doesn't always mean abandoning the past. Sometimes it means making the past better than anyone imagined possible." The Galactic Council chamber remained silent as delegates absorbed this fundamental challenge to their understanding of civilization advancement. Here was a species that had achieved technological superiority not by following established patterns, but by creating entirely new ones. "The Galactic Council," Kell announced formally, "hereby extends an invitation for humanity to join as full members, with all rights and privileges therein." "We accept," Brooks replied immediately. "Though we should mention our embassy ship is a bit unusual. It's technically a flying trebuchet capable of interstellar travel. We call it the diplomatic solution." As laughter rippled through the assembly, Ambassador Kell realized that the galaxy had just become a much more interesting place. Humanity had proven that innovation came not from abandoning the past, but from refusing to accept limitations on what that past could become. In the months that followed, military academies across the galaxy began teaching new courses on unconventional warfare. The human approach, combining ancient mechanical principles with cutting-edge technology, became known as the Trojan Horse Doctrine. And on Earth, Dr. Webb continued designing increasingly elaborate siege engines, each one capable of throwing devastation across impossible distances, while looking like something from humanity's medieval past. The galaxy had learned to fear the sound of wooden catapults being loaded. After all, they never knew what might come flying out.